I'll never forget it. I said, listen, I know you just kind of got here and everything, but if this work doesn't, really doesn't speak to you, it's totally fine. I'm really looking for a gallery. Like, what I want is somebody who's really into this work, because I'm going to make this work, and I'm taking this. I am going places with this work. I'm going to kill it in my art career. I used to think of my art as something that I did, that was an activity. I've always made art, and I've always enjoyed it, and it was something that I became pretty good at. But I don't think that I really thought of it the way I do now. I was separate from it. It was more like a job early on. In fact, it became my job. For many years, I did illustration and all kinds of projects for publishing. I did book covers and annual reports, tons of editorial pictures for magazines, book covers, and it was pretty amazing, actually, in many ways. But I think the hard part was that I was being dictated to, given art direction. I might have a little freedom in how I did something, but what I made, I was kind of following orders. And so maybe that's why I never really embraced it fully. But that worked, actually. Doing illustrations can be incredibly rewarding, and I was able to do a editorial kind of illustration where I had made up things and all my characters, and it was like a magical world that I created. And really I was making pictures that communicated ideas, and I was able to develop and grow in that. But come 5 o'clock, I would really stop thinking about it, and I would go for a run or play with my kids or do other things, and I just wasn't really thinking about it until the next day or Monday. But all that changed. Welcome to Art2Life, a podcast for the creatively curious. My name is Nicholas Wilton, and each week I'll help you rediscover not just the art of your life, but the art in your life. Join me as we explore that perfect blue at twilight, the wild frontiers of art making, and the extraordinary joy of finding your way as you go. It changed because of a lot of challenging things that all came at once. It was about 10 or 15 years ago when the economy really pulled back. My kids were pretty young, and my wife and I were living in a beautiful, beautiful house, and we had worked pretty hard to support this, and we had taken vacations, and things were pretty good. But when the economy pulled back, the illustration jobs kind of dried up. People couldn't afford to pay for advertising anymore, and so my job as a editorial illustrator, it just stopped. And I don't know if you've ever had that experience of doing something that you've wrapped your identity around for 10 years or 15 years, and then all of a sudden it just all goes away. It was really, really challenging to suddenly not have that control over my life, and the bills were piling up and the pressure was increasing, and my self-confidence really, for the first time in my life, kind of just started to diminish. Around this time too, I had sort of seen the writing on the wall with illustration, and I knew that I couldn't just keep this frenetic pace of making picture after picture after picture to pay for things. And so I thought it'd be pretty cool to build a company that used my art, and we could produce things. It was a gift company, actually, that we made. And we did this with a few friends. And the idea was to take the art I was making and manufacture it with onto mirrors and boxes and all kinds of products that some give the possibility to scale up the one and one, the way I was making illustrations, to somehow get ahead of this. So the one cool picture I made, I could make a print of it, or I could use it for another product, and those could be manufactured. And that was the idea. And we got off to a pretty good start, but right around this time, when the economy pulled back, everything kind of suffered. And we got in a big row with our partners around creative freedom. And anyway, we went our separate ways, but it was a tremendous emotional financial loss at the time, that this was sort of the hope for the future. And we had spent a couple years working on it and putting all this effort into it and all this money, and it just turned into this, we were sued each other, and it was just a train wreck and really, really hard. And so that was going on. So the beginning of this pullback in the economy, the tide went out, and with it went this pretty amazing business that we had started, and that partnership fell apart, and they were with our friends, and that fell apart. And so these two things were really almost too much to bear. But then it got worse. For many years, I had put a percentage of my money away from doing illustration to one day hope that I would have enough money in the bank that I could make fine art. And I didn't really think I could make any money doing it, but I thought, well, I would probably could live a pretty simple life and just make fine art if I had enough money to last me, or to live off the interest or whatever. And it was a bit of a pipe dream, it seemed, but I had saved up a lot of money over the years, and we had invested it in different things. And it turns out right around this same time, and exactly the same time, and partly because of this economic downturn, the investor that we had been working with for 10 years lost it all. He lost all the money of everybody. And there was a group of us, and it was a little like a Madoff situation. And that was devastating. That, coupled with losing the illustration, the work, the ability to work, losing all our savings, and losing the hope for the future with this business, it killed us. And actually it had a big impact on my marriage, and that unraveled then too. And so I found myself pretty lost, and the kind of depression that is the kind that it's hard to get out of bed, and it's hard to imagine thinking about that. But I remember, like, you can feel like it's not really worth continuing. I mean, I understand that feeling. And there wasn't anything left. Like, I was too scared to touch anything, because I just felt like all of a sudden I had bad luck, or, trying to sort out what had I done wrong. And really most of these things that happen to us, we blame ourselves, or you try to figure it out, and it usually hasn't anything to do with you, but it feels like it. And I felt so bad about my situation, and I couldn't support my family and my mood, and I didn't even have the confidence to fix it. And one of the things that I did have, because really there wasn't much left, was I had my art still. Even though I had just always kind of done it as a little side hobby, I kind of found it again at this time, because it was the only thing that I could do that I was good at, that didn't require anyone outside people. There was no gatekeepers involved. I could just make art. And so I did. I started making art in my studio, and it kind of helped a little. It distracted me at first. And over the years, I had done some paintings, just personal work, and not done it very much, but I had sold some work before. And so I thought, well, this isn't completely crazy because there just might be, maybe something I'll make we'll find a buyer, or I could sell it. And so even though it felt futile, there was a possibility. And I started making art and really paying attention. And I started to gain momentum with this. And I realized that it was kind of bringing me back to the surface, that the making of the art, that creativity was what I was using to change myself, to bring myself back, to change my circumstances. I mean, it wasn't anything ever that I thought about. I never thought of art this way. I never thought of my creativity as a force that I had. It was just something that I kind of used and had always done a lot of art, and it was just something that I kind of had. But now I was using it. Now it was saving my life. And, after a few months, I started gaining my foothold. I was still pretty depressed, but the art, you get progress with it. You can kind of look at it, or I could, and I could see, even though no one was there, I could see that it was getting stronger. And like that gave me hope. Like there's a journey that you're creating with this stuff, which I was never really aware of before. I just been like a hired hand, do this, do that, do this, do this. The end of the week comes, do another illustration. But all of a sudden I'm making things and I'm thinking about them, and I'm just really focused on this art and trying to pay attention to what felt right, because that's all I had. And at a certain point, after a few months, I did this crazy thing at the time. I rented a studio. It was pretty hard in my house with all that was going on, and I needed to get outside of the house and be in a different place. And so I rented a studio, and it was a little too big for me, but I did it anyway because it was, I was just desperate, and it was my only recourse, really. It was the only thing that was it was like an insurance policy on my hope. So I get in this studio, and it's a lot bigger, and I start making my art and hanging this stuff on the walls, and I needed to get a gallery. I knew that I needed to sell this work somehow. And I was blogging at the time, but there wasn't really the Instagram thing. It was still pretty dependent upon galleries. And so I started to, once I got some work going, and this work was really different for me. And I was trying harder than ever to make the best work I possibly could, almost as if my life depended on it. My life did depend on it. And the more I leaned into this art, the more it gave back to me. It was crazy. It was like a balloon that you blow up with air, and then you release it, and all that energy comes back. And it was just this loop that just started having an impact on myself. I remember I invited a couple galleries to my studio, and it's hard to get galleries, and no one even knew who I was. And the first gallery that came in, and the work was pretty strong. I've been making art my whole life, so I knew that it was good, and I was really kind of believing in it. But I couldn't abide having any negative anything. I was vulnerable. And I remember the gallery owner came in, and he was walking around my studio, and he's looking at these paintings and, not really saying anything, which is kind of sickening, not like he loves it, or, there's not really any reaction, and he's walking around kind of like kicking the tires. And I just felt myself like, I just wanted this guy to get out of my studio, which is crazy because, normally I would just be like, oh, well, what can I do? Want a cup of coffee? Do you like this painting? I can make 6 more like this. But I was really defensive, I mean, in a good way. Like, this is good work. And I said to him, I'll never forget it. I said, listen, I know you just kind of got here and everything, but if this work doesn't, it really doesn't speak to you, I mean, it's totally fine. I'm really looking for a gallery. Like, what I want is somebody who's really into this work, because I'm going to make this work, and I'm taking this. I am going places with this work. I'm going to kill it in my art career. And I remember saying these words, and it wasn't exactly like that, but that was the tone. It's like, I am doing this. And I remember hearing myself saying this, like, where is this coming from? And I remember saying, if you want to be part of this, if you want to get on this bus, I'm going. Like, but totally fine if you don't, but I need you to kind of like leave, like leave now, because I don't have time. This is happening and I am doing this, and I need someone who's going to work as hard as I'm going to do this. It was so powerful for me to say that. I remember, and this guy left, and I wasn't rude or anything, but he said, "Oh, I'll think about it," and he left, and I was just like, whatever, I just need to work. I need you to get back to this. And I just didn't want any distraction. I didn't want anyone kind of pouring water on this fire that I was slowly building up within myself. And when I'm saying fire, it's like, this was a thing I was cultivating. I had never experienced this with my art. I didn't even know that this is what creativity can do for you. There's this fire that you can cultivate. So I ended up getting a gallery, and that was amazing, because I had several, and I approached them all the same way. It was like, you'd be a fool to not, like, this is your one opportunity, gallery, to have my work, and if you don't take it right now, goodbye, and that was a shift. And man, it taught me so much. But I got a gallery, and I ended up doing a show, and I sold a ton of the work, like most of the work. And I sold most of the work before the gallery even had the opening. But it was because the place I was making the art from was so powerful. It was such a fiery, where I was coming from was so strong. There was so much conviction in it. I still was really broke, and I was barely scraping by, and the studio was really big, but I understood what it was giving me. And my plan was to split it. My plan was to divide it into 3 parts and rent the other 2 parts out to someone else, and I would just take a third of it. But once I got in there and I was just seeing how I was painting larger and bigger, I didn't want to share it, So I thought, well, I had done some teaching over the years. I had this little workshop that I would teach at Esalen. So I thought, well, I'm going to teach. I'll just teach, maybe I can get some students, and maybe that can supplement it. Plus, I was learning some new things. So I started these Wednesday night classes, and I just started teaching what I was learning. And what I was learning was that your life and your art are connected, and that creativity is a change agent. And I mean, there's many ways to change your life. There's many ways to do that, and many things people get involved in. I know that, but I was learning, and I learned the power of creativity. And so in these classes, I was just communicating this. And because it was working for me, because I had been so depleted, and I had been so knocked down, and I had climbed my way back out. I mean, I was converted, and so I started this mentorship program. I'm like, I think I can teach people about this. This is amazing. You can actually pull stuff off in your life if you have the right approach, if you can get over your limiting beliefs, and art can help you do that. Art can be the tool that can bring you to the surface. Art can bring you alive. And so I started working, I sent out an invitation. It was a long 20-page letter talking about this opportunity that I had experienced. I mean, I was writing about it like it was something that I just discovered, and I wanted to share it. I mean, I really did. It was so exciting to me. I mean, yes, I was so excited that I was being able to make art, but what had happened, I just couldn't believe it. And that my art, like I was doing fine art, like this was my dream that I had postponed my whole life, that I only found it because some guy lost all my money, and I was forced to lean into my art in a way that I'd never had done before. I was forced to take risks. But now I knew what was possible, and I wanted to share that idea. So I wrote this invitation, a 20-page document about a program, a mentorship program of working with people, and that I would work with somebody for 7 to 10 months. I think it was 10 months initially. And I thought that's about how long it had taken me to turn things around. So I thought I would love to do this. I would love to help other people with this. And I sent my invitation. I had 300 people on my email list, and I sent this out, and I got 10 people to respond who wanted this. And I had phone calls with them to see if they were the right fit. And some dropped away, but I ended up with 10, and I met with them individually. And I was able to communicate. I was able to discern what was missing for them and give them the missing information and some of the things I was learning that made a difference for me. There's something that happens when when I said to that gallery owner, I'm doing this with you or without you. Like when you commit, when you come from that place, it is not egoic, it's not bravado. It's certainty that comes from desire. And there's a humility and a bravery to this that makes it really, really powerful. And people can feel that. You're not proving anything. You're chasing something that's so meaningful to you that you'll do almost anything to make this occur. So I'm working with these individuals, and I did these vision boards with them, and I spent a long time like helping them look at their work and look at their life and where it was stuck. But most of the conversations began with a simple idea about, well, what do you want? What do you really desire? Because when I was stuck, when everything had fallen apart, the only thing I had was my art, but it wasn't just like the activity of art making. It was what it was part of. It was part of a dream of being able to become a fine artist. It was the possibility to make things and have the freedom to make whatever I wanted. So that's how the conversations began with almost everybody. And I would spend a whole day with each of these 10 people and finding out when they were the most happy, what was the most fulfilling art, where things had stopped, and what still remained that had juice, had energy. What brings you alive was what that program was about, that mentorship program. And it wasn't necessarily have to be about art, but finding those things, reconnecting those things, as I did. I mean, everything had been eliminated for me in my life, so it was pretty obvious, the one thing that I still had. But sometimes it's hard to know. Sometimes we just forget. We can be lulled to sleep with all kinds of busyness and things that feel like maybe we're doing them. We're just going through the motions maybe. And we do that, of course, in a lot of things. But without something that that really, really, really matters that you're involved in, things can get flat and you become vulnerable, to all kinds of things. I mean, when the economy changed, it just absolutely revealed the way I'd been living and what was actually not that important to me. And some of the, I was not that committed to the art. I wasn't really living. I wasn't really making it from this place of a personal place. So these conversations, it was powerful to hear from all these people about what their challenges were. And so many of the stories, they were different but the same. Everybody had let it go, like they didn't really feel like there was choice, that they didn't feel they had choices. And by working with them and talking to them, and it's like pulling the rocks out of a river if you want it to run better. Rock by rock, we would pull out the barriers and clean the river so the water could just go faster and more powerfully. And what happened was the people that came into this program, they already kind of came in with success, in a sense, floating around them, because they had made this massive commitment to me. And it was an expensive program because it was going to take most of my time, and it was going to take a whole year of my life, but they had made a commitment because of that, a financial commitment at first, but also an emotional one. And they really wanted this art thing to happen. And what I saw within a month or two of tracking them was that things started to shift for people. People would have experiences and chance meetings that would help them. I'd hear about one artist would bump into another artist at the supermarket, and they would share what they were doing or invite them to their studio, and then they would learn something, and then they would go someplace else because they heard that, and then they would try this kind of material. And there was all this kind of incidents for each of them that occurred because they were carrying around this idea of what they wanted. The mentorship program created a constancy, a constant sort of desire in the forefront. It's just front of your mind all the time. How is this art coming up? How is it going to change? What is the work you're doing now? How is it getting better? And I was amazed at, because of the container of this program, individually, what was happening across the board with everybody. When I started to believe in myself, when my art started to show me and give me something back, and there was a few things I'd made in a row that I kind of liked, like that created a momentum and a confidence. And lots of things happened. I mean, I found the studio really easily. I had some people that came into my life at that time that were really, really helpful. There was a couple books that I read that I just happened to find, that I came across. It was just like the perfect timing. I didn't really think too much about it, but when I saw what was happening to everyone in this program, because they were thinking, because they had set intentions about what they wanted, all kinds of things were starting to occur in their life. The universe was sending in things. And I don't know, I'm not a woo-y person at all. I'm just reporting back what I experienced. And it blew my mind. I was so captivated by this experience. And I wanted to understand it more. And it was almost a miracle. At the end of this program, how far people got, because mostly of what they had done. But I remember halfway through, I realized that originally these people weren't in contact with each other at all. But because of what was happening to them, I kept saying, oh my God, I'd have these private conversations with each of them on the phone several times a month. And I would say, there's another person in this program very similar to you. And you can't believe what happened to her, and I would tell these stories. And then I realized I've got to put these people together. And that's what I did. And that's when it really, really started to take off. I became almost obsessed with this process and what's possible. It is the closest thing to magic and wonder that I've ever experienced in my life. How this happens, how we feel, how we show up. How is it possible that that can change what crosses our path? But I assure you it does. This is what I saw. And it was actually the beginning of Art2Life. Art2Life was founded on that. I realized I love making art, but I also love this magical thing that happens when we step into, I just wanted to know more. How does this happen? This kind of serendipity, this synchronicity, when you're moving in the direction you should be. The way I was with those gallery owners, the way that I showed up for myself, that was the best version of myself. That's how I should be. That was what I needed to become. And to leave the sad story of my misfortune and feeling sorry for myself and blaming all kinds of things and people. So the idea that art making is the process of becoming ourselves, that's where I learned it. And that heartbreak that I went through taught me this. It actually gave me the instruction manual for being able to coach people. There's no way I would have been able to teach people and help them had I not had such a devastating hit rock bottom experience. And when you know something and when you can speak from certainty, people can feel it. And that firsthand experience, and then the experience of doing several years of working with groups of people in this mentorship program, just cemented it. If we can create the right container for ourselves, and these things are like others, having people, having a community of people that can support us, and we can reconnect to what we love and follow that and trace that and use creativity to manifest the changes in our art, but also our life. Those two go hand in hand. And Art2Life, that's where that came from. That's why it's called Art2Life. I look back now and cannot believe where this all started. From such a scared, broken place, that this kind of work, these ideas saved me. And not only saved me, but it gave me everything. I got to make fine art. I became a fine artist. And then I got to work with so many people. And now thousands of people have benefited. And it's a miracle. And there's not a day that doesn't go by that I just feel so much gratitude for just the universe or just life and what is possible. And I think that's why Art2Life's been described in many ways. And I think that some of the things about it, the buoyancy of it, it's like, you guys are so positive. Well, that's because of that outcome. It's like hope, and you can change things. You can make your life amazing and your art. And that is what we've continued to do. And that's the mission. That's the purpose. That's a big, huge part of my purpose in my life, is to show people that this is possible for them. So this story comes up for me because every year, beginning of the year, as many of you know, that mentorship program and what I was teaching those artists quite a few years ago now, it turned into the Creative Visionary Program. It's a 12-week program that we offer one time a year. And it's the culmination of everything I learned then, but then taken to a whole nother level. It brings together all those elements that I spoke of. It brings the people together, the community, which is so, so important. It brings together the ideas of reconnecting to what inspires you, what brings you alive. And it gives you all the information, all the fundamental information that for me, I had a lot of it because I'd been doing illustration a long time, but it was different. The kind of information that I had to learn had more to do with making work that I wanted to make, that really spoke to me, that everything I was making, everything that I was creating was being derived mostly from myself. And that kind of information wasn't so readily available, at least to me, for me, when I went to art school. Since then, I've discovered that most of this information, many, many artists don't even have. And certainly those starting out need. The other piece that I learned in that time was a way of making art. I went from getting assignments and being forced to have deadlines to just working in a studio by myself. And it was pretty rough in the beginning and pretty rocky. But over time, I learned a process, and that's also what I was teaching in this mentorship program. Giving people a way to develop their work, a way to teach themselves that's sustainable and joyful. And it's crazy, like, so your life can feel good. I mean, that's why I'm always saying that word, because it wasn't so joyful for me, and it's probably just pretty good feels joyful to me at the time, but there's definitely, it can be amazing. Your experience of this art making can feel so great. There's this idea out there that it's got to be so hard and you got to suffer for so many years in order to do this. And that's not at all what we teach at Art2Life. But the Creative Visionary program brings these three things together: this community and all the art making information and a process, a way of working, a way of figuring out what inspires you. And so you can generate work that fulfills you and is personal and authentic. So I believe this podcast is coming out the very last day that the Creative Visionary program is going to be open for enrollment. And later tonight at 11:59 p.m., we're going to close enrollment for the Creative Visionary program. So if this is all interesting to you, check this program out. You can go to artlifejoy.com and find all the information about it. And we offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if it's 12 weeks long, but we understand that this is a big commitment. But if this is the right time for you, have a look at this program. And I would love to have you join us. All right. Thanks so much. Hey, thanks for listening to the Art2Life show. If you enjoyed the podcast, please help me get the word out by sharing it with your friends on Instagram at art2life_world. The recording of this and all episodes, along with a place to leave comments, see additional photos, and discover a whole new approach to making art, can be found by going to art2lifepodcast.com. And secondly, if you could leave a rating and review in whatever app you're listening on today, I would super appreciate it. It makes a big difference. And last but not least, before you go, if you'd like to be on my artist list, every Sunday morning I send out a video blog all about art making. Go to art2lifepodcast.com to sign up. And all these links are in the show notes, of course. Thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you next week.